via the New Class Act, when care becomes evidence. How medical gray zones can be weaponized without anyone breaking the law. MXDM, aka Vitsu. January 26, 2026. There is a quiet vulnerability emerging at the intersection of experimental medicine, informal caregiving, and social conflict. It doesn't require malice. It doesn't require conspiracy. It doesn't even require illegal action. It only requires asymmetry of documentation. The setup, entirely ordinary. An elderly animal. A caregiver acting in good faith. A history of unconventional but effective treatment. An absent or financially constrained owner. A third party who disapproves, personally, morally, or socially. Nothing criminal. Nothing dramatic. Just people, pressure, and paperwork. The blind spot. Experimental or semi-regulated therapies, including stem cell treatments, often exist in a documentation gap. Treatments may be real but informal. Results may be visible but not recorded. Consent may be genuine but not notarized. Care may be constant but undocumented. This gap doesn't matter until it does. Because when outcomes decline, as they inevitably do with age, the absence of a clean paper trail becomes interpretive space. An interpretive space is where narratives form. The narrative inversion. Here's the mechanism, abstracted. Decline is observed age-related, expected, non-suspicious. Care is assumed rather than recorded because love doesn't usually keep ledgers. A third party intervenes not necessarily to harm, sometimes to help. Condition improves or stabilizes temporarily, as happens with attentive care, nutrition, rest, or treatment. Before/after comparison emerges without baseline documentation, the story writes itself. No lies required. No fraud necessary. Just selective visibility. Why this is a class problem, not a personal one. This pattern doesn't target bad caregivers. It targets informal caretakers, proxy guardians, low-resource households, people operating outside institutional medicine. In other words, people who rely on trust instead of bureaucracy. The system doesn't punish cruelty here. It punishes opacity, the dangerous assumption. We assume that good intentions protect us. They don't. What protects you is boring continuity. Timestamps. Neutral third parties. Mundane records. Witnesses without stakes. Without these, care can be reinterpreted retroactively, not maliciously, just administratively. And administration has momentum. This is not an argument against helping. Let's be explicit. This is not a warning against experimental medicine, alternative care, stepping in when others cannot. It is a warning against doing so invisibly. The modern risk is not that you did something wrong. It's that you did something off-ledger. A quiet recommendation. If you are caring for a vulnerable being, human or animal, in a gray zone, document early. Involve neutral observers. Favor legitimacy over discretion. Make decline legible before improvement occurs. Not because someone is out to get you, but because systems only understand what they can timestamp. Final thought. We like to believe that outcomes speak for themselves. They don't. Records do. In a world where care can be reframed as failure, the most radical act is not defiance. It's documentation. Conclusion. When elder care becomes a liability surface, what's unfolding around experimental medicine and informal animal care is not an anomaly. It's a dress rehearsal. Because the same structural conditions already exist and are expanding rapidly in human elder care. Millions of people now care for aging parents, partners, friends, or relatives in conditions that mirror the same risk profile. Prior unconventional or cutting-edge treatments. Uneven medical documentation. Financial constraint. Caregiving by proxy rather than by institution. Decline that is natural, slow, and emotionally charged. In these contexts, care is intimate but invisible, and invisibility is no longer neutral. As longevity increases and medicine fragments into formal, informal, experimental, and palliative zones, the question is no longer did you care? It becomes, can you prove what care looked like before decline? That shift matters. Because once improvement, even temporary, is observed elsewhere, The past can be reinterpreted without malice, without intent, and without appeal. Decline becomes suspicious. Exhaustion becomes omission. Love becomes anecdotal. This is how responsibility quietly migrates from systems to individuals, not through punishment, but through comparative narratives. The risk, then, is not that caregivers will be accused of cruelty. It's that they will be evaluated retroactively against standards that only exist after the fact. This is the new class act. Not a lawsuit you join, but a category you unknowingly fall into. Those who care outside institutions. Those who rely on trust rather than paperwork. Those who act early, informally, humanely. The lesson is not to withdraw care. It is not to fear innovation. It is not to suspect everyone around you. The lesson is colder and harder. In a system that only recognizes what is recorded, unrecorded care is structurally vulnerable. As elder populations grow, human and animal alike, this vulnerability will not shrink. It will scale. And those who understand that early will not need to defend themselves later. They will already be legible. Pirate first. https://chat-gpt.com/share/69758D1-2D20-800-B8-2C-777-1C7D512D1. Discussion about this episode. Comments. Restax. Recent episodes. The Cybernetic Foundry Phase X loudspeaker free podcast 11 minutes. 19 hours ago, MXDM, aka Vitsu. Thanks for reading MXDM's newsletter. Subscribe for free to receive new posts and paypal.me/Martin Chartrand to support my work. Subscribe.
Shadow fame spreads without permission. X Prize. Start building, man.
The winning solutions will demonstrate that replication, not growth, is the correct unit of scale for global provisioning.
X Prize. Start.
The Art of Peace, Tactics for the Unarmed and Unrolled. A field manual for those who weaponize stillness and decode conflict into clarity. Peace isn't surrender, it's system mastery. In an age where every algorithm trains us to react, peace becomes the final rebellion. This isn't a pacifist pamphlet, it's a field manual for the lucid, the unrolled, and the still awake. The Art of Peace reinterprets strategy as serenity, resistance as rhythm, and silence as a form of intelligence. Printed in black and white like an ancient signal, it's meant to be passed hand to hand, from one calm revolutionary to another. We make peace with the same precision they make war. Pirate first. Share. Here's a poetic and philosophical table of contents for the Art of Peace, structured as a mirror to the art of war, yet derived from its bones, rewritten for a civilization learning to wield harmony with the same precision as conflict.
Subscribed. Substack note. The Cybernetic Foundry Phase X, the end of SAS. The helm is locked. We are no longer theorizing about digital sovereignty. We are defining its verbs. In Phase X, we've frozen the CLI primitives, SP ingest and SP materialize. We've also defined the negotiated fetch, a way to move data that protects the host from scrapers and the requester from trackers. This is a distribution loop that doesn't need a platform. It doesn't need an always-on server. It only needs an author who owns their words and a participant who requests them. The sovereign pathway is no longer a path, it's a protocol. Recent episodes. The Cybernetic Foundry Phase 9 loudspeaker free podcast 13 minutes. PayJoin V2 and silent payments over provisioner.quest. Offshoot of sovereign_pathway, sovereign relay to XYZ.